everybody. My name is Jeffrey. I hope this is, I hope that
In our headlines on this Monday afternoon, August 8th. Upon returning to the top office today following a short summer holiday which he spent here in Seoul, President Yoon Suk-yeol highlighted the importance of addressing national matters with the people's best interests at heart. Foreign Minister Park Jin is traveling to the Chinese city of Qingdao on this Monday following an official invitation from his counterpart Wang Yi. The two officials are expected to touch upon issues of bilateral as well as global interests. And during Monday's emergency economic meeting, Finance Minister Chuseok Ho said a set of measures will be shared within the week aimed at holding steady the prices of key products ahead of next month's Chuseok holiday. President Yoon Suk-yeol is back at work, and among his first words to the press were his thoughts about whether or not South Korea would join the US-led chip alliance.
정부 각 부처가 그 문제는 철저하게 우리 국익의 관점에서 세심하게 살피고 있습니다. 너무 걱정하지 않으셔도 저희들이 하여튼 관련 부처하고 잘 살피고 논의해서 우리 국익을 잘 지켜내겠습니다.
His remarks follow the government's reported intention to hold more talks on the matter with the US. Meanwhile, Yoon has also pledged to place at heart the best interests of the public as his administration moves forward with matters of national interest. Foreign Minister Park Jin is traveling to neighboring China on this Monday at the invitation of his counterpart Wang Yi to address issues of mutual interest ranging from semiconductors to security. Our Song Yoo-jin reports.
South Korea's Foreign Minister Park Jin is going to meet on Tuesday with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi in the Chinese city of Qingdao. He's going to be in China for 3 days on his first official visit to the country since taking office in May. A lot has changed since the two last met a month ago. Tensions between China and the United States have escalated dramatically following U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. According to Seoul's foreign ministry, they plan to discuss issues of mutual concern as well as regional and global issues. It's possible that Minister Park could express concern about the situation in the Taiwan Strait as he did at the East Asia Summit a few days ago. China has been deploying aircraft and warships to the area, with some even crossing the median line, an unofficial buffer separating Taiwan and the mainland. But it's considered unlikely that Park will bring it up since both sides will want to avoid talking about matters that could lead to conflict. They are, however, likely to discuss Seoul joining the U.S.-led semiconductor supply chain framework with Japan and Taiwan, known as the Chip 4 or the Fab 4. The South Korean government has been stressing that it does not intend to ostracize China from the chip value chain, but Beijing has criticized the deal as damaging the free trade order. Its state-run Global Times has even warned of retaliation. Another pending bilateral issue is Beijing's fierce opposition to Seoul's potential deal with Washington to deploy an additional unit of the Advanced Missile Defense System THAAD, which Beijing strongly opposes because of the system's powerful radar. Regarding North Korea, Park has a lot on his shoulders. He'll likely ask China to play a constructive role in deterring further nuclear tests by the regime. Last time he asked Beijing to help bring Pyongyang back to the negotiating table, he got no response. The top diplomats could also discuss expanding the South Korea-China Free Trade Agreement and boosting cultural exchanges. The Yoon Suk-yeol administration has been seeking ways to improve ties with China based on mutual respect. Tuesday's talks could set the tone for relations in the years to come. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News.
Back on the local front, a set of measures will be shared this week to stabilize the cost of living ahead of the Chuseok holiday, which falls in early September this year. At an emergency economic meeting on this Monday, Finance Minister Cheong Wa Dae said under the planned measures, local farmers will be provided with subsidies and exemptions from tariffs on some imported food products. Also, to address the labour shortage in key industries, Chu added the government will expand the quota for foreign workers and issue E9 visas to more non-Korean labourers in the coming weeks. And the local economy is looking ahead to a greater number of risk factors. Now, this is according to the Korea Development Institute, which added that while chips and cars were holding the economy steady, it is nonetheless likely that the country will be met with a downturn in the course of time amid external uncertainties and soaring inflation. In fact, consumer sentiment has plunged as consumer prices jumped a record 6.3% in July. Also, slowing growth in the US and China and fears of a potential global recession are reportedly further clouding prospects. Meanwhile, the country's electricity demand is projected to peak this week as the scorching weather persists and people return from their summer holiday. According to the Korea Power Exchange Monday, power demand will top 90,000 megawatts. In fact, officials there believe last month's record of almost 93,000 megawatts may be broken, while the reserve ratio could plunge to as low as 5.4%. Now, in order to ensure a stable power supply, the level should reportedly remain above 10%. The Energy Ministry previously forecast that power demand would hit a seasonal high in the second week of August. In other news, a ceasefire has come into effect after 3 days of violent confrontation between Israel and Palestinian militants that led to at least 43 losses of lives. Our Kim Hyo-sun has the latest.
Israel and the Palestinian Islamic Jihad militant group agreed to a ceasefire mediated by Egypt late on Sunday.
We announced a ceasefire from 11:30 p.m. and we welcome the Egyptian efforts that were made to end this battle.
This comes after 3 days of intense cross-border fighting triggered by surprise Israeli airstrikes. The latest clashes have echoed preludes to previous Gaza wars. The Palestinian Health Ministry confirmed that at least 43 people, almost half of them civilians, including children, were killed in the strikes. Over 300 others were injured. Even leading up to the truce, rockets were still being launched across the border by both sides. Amid sirens and explosions, people were witnessed fleeing in Tel Aviv. Against this backdrop, a second senior commander of the militant Islamic Jihad group was killed, according to Reuters, on Sunday. This comes on the heels of the death of another senior commander who was killed last Friday. This is the worst outbreak of violence between Israeli and Palestinian militants since an 11-day war in May last year. Whether the latest confrontation could yet escalate into a full-scale conflict is largely dependent on whether Hamas, the largest Islamist movement controlling the Gaza Strip, decides to intervene. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Over in the U.S., the Senate has passed a $430 billion legislation to counter climate change, paving the path for the Biden administration's first tangible step to easing carbon emissions by 40% by the year 2030. The lawmakers passed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act with a 51-50 vote on Sunday following a marathon debate session. The bill includes $369 billion in climate and energy provisions to transform America's energy sector and to broaden energy access. It also aims to lower drug prices and raise some corporate taxes. The bill will now be handed over to the House of Representatives for a vote, which is expected to take place on Friday. And on that note, we end part one of the Daily Report. In part two, we address South Korea's ties with the ASEAN. Stay with us.
Share South Korea's experience in tackling COVID-19 and introduce a Korean New Year. A Korean survivor of Japan's wartime sex slavery met with
extraordinary climate crisis and pledged to work with the EU to tackle the challenge.
The objective of its North Korea policy is
protesters gathering across the country to peacefully demand an end to hate and violence.
Arirang. what matters.
So good right now. Maybe I had a drink or two, but this somehow feels like it's forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Maybe this is forever. All my friends are here having fun and feeling good right now. Forever.
Welcome back. This past week marked a flurry of diplomatic engagements over in Cambodia as the Association of Southeast Asian Nations kicked off its 55th Foreign Ministers meeting and extend exchanges to include the broader Indo-Pacific region. Now, for more on the ASEAN's ties with South Korea, I have Professor Park Jin at Tonga University live online. Professor Park, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Okay, my pleasure to see you.
I also have Professor Jeffrey Madatu Kalimag at Kyungsung University joining the session virtually from the Philippines. Professor Kalimag, it's a pleasure as well.
Thank you for having me, Sun-hee. It's a pleasure.
Right. Professor Park, we'll start with you then. During his opening remarks at the South Korea-ASEAN Foreign Ministers meeting, Park Jin claimed that the ASEAN would be the center of the Yoon administration's Indo-Pacific initiative. First then, let's begin with a few words on the Yoon administration's Indo-Pacific initiative and its relevance, perhaps, to the ASEAN.
Yes, Minister Park Jin had a super busy schedules in Phnom Penh, Cambodia from August 4th to 5th. So he emphasized the importance of relation between Korea and ASEAN there. As we know, on May 23rd in Tokyo, U.S. President Biden held an official launch event for the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework for Prosperity, it's a the economic war, the IPEF, having 13 nations as partners. Korea, USA, Japan, India, and then Australia, New Zealand, and ASEAN 7 nations. In short, this can be said as a multilateral economic cooperation organization among trusted partners that arose a byproduct of the U.S.-China conflict. And it ensures a balanced link between economy and security in the Indo-Pacific region, specifically excluding China. Perhaps the Yoon administration's IPI can be viewed as a foreign policy to cope with this framework, because the U.S. is asking us for a clear position. However, in the 7 ASEAN nations are participating in IPEF, naturally, it is also a policy necessary to maintain close ties with ASEAN. I understand that IPI's specific strategy is currently being written in detail, including conception of WCOP, etc.
Right. Professor Kalima, what can you tell us, that is, about trade ties between South Korea and the ASEAN, and what do you propose, perhaps, to further boost them?
Oh, well, South Korea and ASEAN has relatively achieved its original goals based on its foundational proponents when they initiated economic ties through a framework agreement in 2005. ASEAN is South Korea's second largest trading partner, and South Korea is ASEAN's 6th largest trading partner. However, more than 60% of ASEAN-Korea trade, amounting to $144 billion, were only shared by Vietnam and Singapore. Similar with investments. Now, with the characteristics of ASEAN, with a population of more than 650 million as a potential market, the 4th largest economy by 2030, a sustainable annual economic growth rate, a thriving factory base, and Korea as the 10th largest economy, I want to believe that there is a significant room of improvement where there are many areas to explore beyond Vietnam and Singapore, and especially with the aftermath and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. I would recommend to just make ease of doing business be a priority, take advantage of ICT and big data, focus on high valued commodities, perhaps frequent negotiations, and incentivize more to accelerate trade. Korea has surpassed Japan in terms of trade volume with ASEAN. China, even with a mammoth 4 times bigger trade volume, faces some challenges as some ASEAN member states are cautious because of their disputes with China. So the momentum for Korea to increase its trade exponentially with ASEAN is in place. And this is a great opportunity for Korea.
Right, that is good to know. And Professor Park, beyond economy then, with regard to security, what are some of the common challenges that the two sides share, and what effort do you see as essential moving forward?
So it's a very difficult problem. So actually speaking, we are in a really tough and shaking place. There is strong demand from the United States to choose her side and eventually to abandon the attitude of seeing both sides, US and China, as co-partners. Also, as we may see, China threatens to break up our relations if we stand together with US. As we all know that, so a lot of profit in the trade with China, and then so we can't abandon easily the relations with China. So we must demand the equidistant supporters from ASEAN to ease tensions between two Koreas and do so in a way that does not harm the relations with China. So especially as far as the issues of South China Sea are concerned, so we should review them very carefully. So the all areas of ASEAN do not concerned with the South China Sea problems. And then we do not draw the problem, the tension between two Koreas into ASEAN problems. So we do choose separately both problems equally.
Right.
Thank you.
Professor Kalimak, cultural exchanges are also very vital components of economic exchanges. That being said, Professor Kalimak, can South Korea make greater use of Hallyu perhaps to better engage its ASEAN counterparts?
Well, indeed, cultural exchanges are vital components of economic exchanges, as these open more opportunities and exploration. And the country has been enjoying the power of Hallyu in advancing its presence and influence globally, including the ASEAN region. And it is one product that plays both as a valuable export commodity and at the same time comes with cultural influences that assimilates other cultures to Korea and become part of it. You know, after a Gangnam Style phenomenon that reached an unprecedented milestone of 1 billion YouTube views in 2012, now about 10 billion combined, I was adamant to believe that K-pop would be able to sustain its popularity and another one would exist. Theoretically, understanding its dynamics using Korea's traditional export-oriented growth and diversification strategies, strong government support, top-notch creatives, and applying advanced technologies and innovation, Gangnam Style has proven to be just a door opening to more opportunities for Hallyu and Korean products ranging from online games, drama, electronics, food, beauty, medical, and so many others. And because of these, more ASEAN citizens are engaged with anything Korea, especially at the grassroots level. It is sustainable, and the impact on the economy would be tremendous as more and more are coming to Korea for tourism, education, training, work, and I know for the fact that many even considering staying long-term in Korea.
Right. And Professor Park, then, aside from the agricultural, economic and security arenas, what are some other perhaps areas of mutual interest that South Korea and the ASEAN, that is, could work on together in the future?
Yes, actually, there are so many fields of cooperation that I can't even count. The security issue has already been mentioned. So aside from that, although we are making a lot of profit from our trade with China, we have experienced that if security issues are concerned, that relationship can collapse at once, relentlessly from the third issue before. Therefore, the economic investment to ASEAN should be further accelerated more than now. From my point of view, I think there is no future without ASEAN. So we are working together as best friends.
Right.
And look at the ASEAN people who love Hallyu. They do really love our Korean culture and arts. But how do we understand that? We have to go further for tourism, for example, and invite them to Korea for work, study, or meeting. Also, we make an effort to get to know their lifestyle from our small concerns. That is a very important point of view.
Right, of course. Professor Kalimak, beyond South Korea's talks with the ASEAN, other important topics last week were the war in Ukraine and, of course, the situation in Myanmar. Now, with regard to the latter, some pundits say the ASEAN and its partners need to do more to address the humanitarian crisis in Myanmar under its military junta. What are your thoughts on this, Professor?
Well, it is unfortunate that military junta in Myanmar resumed in 2021. I was hoping that the elections held there in 2010 would lead to the road to democracy and end the military rule that lasted for about 50 years from 1962 to 2011, but to no avail. I suggest that ASEAN should do more and find ways to uphold commitment to agreements. In fact, ASEAN has already a 5-point consensus to solve the Myanmar crisis, which Myanmar agreed to, but ceremoniously disregarded it. ASEAN may review and rethink its non-interference policy, amidst the crisis. And apparently, ASEAN is weak on this aspect, as we could not find accountability on the actions of its members.
Right, unfortunately then. Meanwhile, moving forward, Professor Park, the ASEAN Regional Forum is perhaps the only multilateral security platform that North Korea attends. How can we perhaps seek to make better use of this forum to engage North Korea?
Yes, actually, the ALF is a really big organization, compromising, with the 10 ASEAN member countries, and I think 16 participating countries as dialogue partners. So therefore, we can discuss the security issues rising in East Asia, at least, in a multilateral relationship. And it can be a place where tensions within the region can be resolved. So since North Korea is also a member there, so there will be an opportunity to talk about tensions between two Koreas. But to be honest, it is difficult to say that this organization has been a great help in inter-Korean issues so far. So I guess the participation of North Korea depends upon the role of China. In that respect, absolutely, we need a wise dual relationship strategy that also considers our better relationship with China. What is the solution then? This is, of course, a task of politicians. In my opinion, we need a strategy to deal with economic and security issues separately. And it is a strategy based on give and take. So we do not emphasize that only the problem of tensions between two Koreas there.
Right. Professor Kalimak, ASEAN members have also warned about the risks of miscalculation and perhaps potential confrontation among the world's major powers in light of U.S. House Representative Speaker Nancy Pelosi's trip to Taiwan. Do you share these concerns?
Yes, I do share the concern of ASEAN. The fact is that ASEAN's stand on the one China policy remains, and at the same time, ASEAN member countries remain silent about Speaker Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. ASEAN, known as a neutral region that wants to maintain as such, is put in a dilemma where they should not be at the burden in the first place. Every state involved in the China-Taiwan conflict must be responsible, so not to risk miscalculation and potential confrontation. I would rather be more skeptical in asking whether there are international laws and treaties being violated by the United States in visiting Taiwan. That being said, we may look into the details and compromise for the sake of stability and peace. We are faced with a lot of challenges, from health crisis, which is COVID-19 and monkeypox, to natural calamities, to war in Ukraine. And these already brought the world to its knees. And everyone agrees that we do not need another crisis with all these existing problems that we are dealing now. There should not be any provocation and threats, as this only escalate tension. And clearly, both the United States and China are testing its powers in the region. But if any, the good thing is that hegemonic tendencies of China in the region are pacified with the presence of the United States.
Meanwhile, Professor Park, as you mentioned earlier, Foreign Minister Park Jin's schedule over in Cambodia was hectic, to say the least. That being said, then, how do you evaluate his diplomatic endeavors thus far as South Korea seeks to play a greater role in the international arena?
Yes, he has spent a super busy schedule, I guess. So, in August 4th and 5th, he had a lot of official meetings with other foreign ministers from various countries. And frankly speaking, I'm so concerned about his health. I'm so worried about it. So as we all know, diplomacy is not the work of a single minister, but it is undeniable that he's doing a great job. And then as soon as he got the position of the Minister of Foreign Affairs, he went around the world, here and there. So East Hemisphere is the West Hemisphere all around the Earth. But just to say one thing, as mentioned before, I hope that now he would make creative ideas for better relations with ASEAN. So as you see the new certain policy of the last Moon administration, so the last administration also, last government also recognized ASEAN is a very important partners for in the future. And also the Minister Park Jin came to think of ideas for better relations with ASEAN, bearing in mind that ASEAN is the only reason that we replace China in the future. So we don't believe that China will be our the forever partner, you know. As soon as the security problem occurs, the relation will be stopped. Will stop at once.
Right. And very briefly speaking, Professor Kalimak, what are your words of advice as Korea seeks to expand its regional presence and participation in global affairs? I think we have about like 30 seconds.
Oh yeah, Korea has been leading initiatives from climate change to the products that they have global brands. South Korea is neutral and a friendly country. Its products and aid were welcomed anywhere in the world. However, controversial internal and domestic affairs with regards to non-locals' welfare and situations such as discrimination should be appropriately addressed so as not be spilled over borders. That way, Korea becomes a model, and the image of Korea as a partner would be maintained and developed.
Right. Thank you very much for those insightful words, Professor Kalimag. And Professor Park, thank you very much for joining us live as well.
Thank you
very much, Elle. Bye.
The U.S. city of Glendale in the county of Los Angeles is marking Comfort Women Day in memory of the victims of sexual slavery under Japanese imperial rule. Our Ising has more on the event this year.
A statue of a girl clenching her fist. It's been over 9 years since the Peace Monument was installed in the city of Glendale, California. On July 30th, 2012, thanks to the efforts of the Korean American community and the city of Glendale, Comfort Women Day was officially declared. The very first overseas monument to commemorate the victims of sexual slavery by the Japanese Army was installed the following year. 2022 marked the 11th Comfort Women Day with a special cultural event taking place at the Glendale Central Library. It was all the more special as it was the first time the city held the event in 3 years due to the COVID-19 pandemic. A special exhibition was also held in which 4 Korean artists participated, and large sculptures with historic significance welcomed visitors.
Because of the COVID-19 pandemic, we were unable to fully commemorate the 10th Comfort Women Day. So for the 11th event, we brought in large sculptures to mark the day.
And there were barriers to overcome before Glendale became the very base from where the world got to be informed of the plight of the victims. In 2014, a far-right Japanese group even filed a lawsuit against the city, seeking the removal of the Peace Monument. The Korean community responded strongly, and the city of Glendale fought the lawsuit. After 3 years of legal battles, the court ruled in favor of the city, calling the installation of the monument legal. And there's a reason why the Korean community, along with the city, continue to fight to remember the victims of Japanese wartime sexual slavery.
I think we should know the history right away and pass it on to future generations. And if you're faced with opposition that doesn't make sense to you, you have to be brave and fight it.
Comfort Women Day has been promoted as an official event in Glendale since 2017, and associated events will be held until October 9th. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the Culture Ministry here has spoken of plans to transform the former presidential office, that is Cheong Wa Dae, into a cultural landmark. My colleague Kim Bo-kyung has more on this ambitious agenda.
Cheong Wa Dae, the Blue House, is to be turned into South Korea's own version of Versailles. The Culture Ministry has developed a blueprint to make the former presidential office into an arts and culture landmark. Detailed plans came out during Minister Park Bo-gyun's briefing to President Yoon Suk-yeol on the ministry's long-term goals last month. The main purpose is to recreate a living Cheong Wa Dae by using all the elements: magnificent buildings, beautiful scenery, arboretum, and history embedded at the site.
Cheong Wa Dae has approached the public in the form of a static landscape. In the next stage, Cheong Wa Dae should be given to the people as a place that's alive.
Parts of the main office building, official residence, and Yeongbin-gwan, where large-scale meetings and official events for state guests were held, would become exhibition sites, while preserving the original state. This autumn, around 340 out of the Blue House's 600 artworks will be displayed for people to enjoy. They include classic artworks by Korean painting masters that happened at the site since former President Lee Seung-man's time in 1948.
Art pieces that only the few enjoyed at a secretive place of power for a long time will go back to people's arms. There will be a chance for people to easily get to see Korean painting masterpieces this fall.
The outdoor area, including Nokjiwon, will be part of a sculpture park, while historical sites and cultural heritage will be preserved. Visitors would also get to know the history and stories related to former presidents with the help of data collected from the committee of experts and former presidents' sons, daughters, and relatives. The plans were welcomed by experts in the art and culture sector, including the Federation of Artistic and Cultural Organization of Korea, saying it would transform Cheong Wa Dae from a symbol of authority into a foundation of cultural prosperity. Adding that the Blue House itself has significant value as a cultural heritage site with a long history dating from the Goryeo dynasty, the group said there is infinite potential to create content fusing both history and culture. They hope the plan will play a key role in making South Korea a cultural powerhouse, and it is expected that a variety of content will be displayed there through close cooperation with the arts sector. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
On the medical front, a new study by researchers here shows the process that creates urine may be to blame for aggravating memory loss in dementia patients. Our Yoon explains.
Alzheimer's disease is the cause of dementia in more than 70% of diagnosed patients. When the brains of Alzheimer's disease patients are scanned, a large amount of a toxic substance called amyloid beta is found. This toxic substance is known to be the main cause of dementia as it destroys nerve cells in the brain. The development for treatments for dementia has been at a standstill for a long time. Scientists get as far as clinical trials only for treatment to show a lack of improvement in symptoms, or treatments are proven to be minimally effective compared to the side effects, as in the case of one treatment approved by the US FDA for the first time in June of last year that was known to directly remove toxic substances from the brain. But domestic researchers have now discovered a new cause for Alzheimer's disease. They confirmed that, quite similar to the urea circuit that detoxifies ammonia in the liver, there's a urea circuit in the star cells in the brain. When the urea circuit is activated in the reactive star cells, this generates putrescine, an organic compound, and GABA, a naturally occurring amino acid, which have been shown to cause dementia.
If the urea cycle in the brain is activated and leads to the recovery, there's no problem. But if the reactive star cells that detoxify ammonia and produce urea remain activated, this could be toxic to many of the surrounding cells.
ODC1 is one of the enzymes constituting the urea cycle. The research team confirmed that while the urea cycle is activated in reactive star cells, if the ODC1 enzyme is inhibited, the amount of putrescine and GABA generated through the urea circuit decreases. Tested on Alzheimer's model mice, their memory was shown to be restored.
The approach of existing dementia treatment aims to eliminate amyloid directly, but our new approach that targets ODC1 has the advantage of creating an improved environment where the toxic amyloid beta substance is naturally reduced.
This research team plans to continue follow-up research on their discovery to develop a new treatment that inhibits urea circuit enzymes. In South Korea, the annual spending on dementia, from patient care to research, stands at 16.5 trillion won, roughly $12.6 billion US dollars. This figure is expected to reach $48 billion US dollars by 2040. With more research and development, we hope each new discovery is a step closer towards finding an effective treatment for dementia. 이은진, Arirang News.
In our extended feature segment this week, we shed light on efforts to maintain a Korean tradition that is also on the list, that is, of UNESCO's cultural heritage. We're talking about female divers, better known as haenyeo, in the southern island of Jeju, and their livelihoods despite the challenges posed by the toils of their trade. Arirang's Lee Si-hoo has a first-hand account.
In the sea surrounding South Korea's southernmost island, there are women who follow the rules of nature to make a living. They are known as the haenyeo, or literally sea women, of Jeju Island, who harvest seafood from underwater while holding their breath. The haenyeo can hold their breath for about 2 minutes and plunge as deep as 30 meters each dive. The centuries-old tradition was added to UNESCO's list of intangible cultural heritage in 2016.
It received recognition for its sustainability for preserving the harvesting grounds and for the community that mutually helps each other.
Without the assistance of oxygen tanks, haenyeo can only collect as many sea creatures as their breath or sum allows. They also limit the size of their catch, like abalone, conch, and sea urchins, to preserve the ecosystem. However, the profession is failing to attract young people to replenish its ranks. The number of haenyeo on Jeju has shrunk from 14,000 in the 1970s to a little over 3,400 in 2021. The average diver is now older than 70.
Time is passing and we are aging. These days, there are about 100 haenyeo who retire due to health reasons every year.
Experts say there are many reasons for the decline, including increased education and job opportunities for women. But possibly the biggest reason is simply how tough the work is.
More than anything, the work is tough. The solidarity among women doesn't change the fact that being in the water is strenuous work.
To preserve the dying tradition, Jeju City founded a school in 2008 to train young haenyeo divers. At Hansupul Haenyeo School, students learn how to hold their breath for long periods and harvest seafood. During the 4-month course, they learn how to spot and handle sea creatures as well as make traditional haenyeo clothing. Trainees also learn how to make taewak, the buoys that haenyeo use to collect their catch-in. The classes are taught by active haenyeo divers.
Since haenyeo have so much know-how, there's a lot to learn. They also teach us in an engaged way so we can have fun learning.
I decided to take a dive with the students in one of their practice sessions.
So I've changed into a diving suit that's worn by haenyeos when they're working outside in the ocean. It's very stretchy, as you can see. I can move my arms around and reach far down as well. It's also really warm, so we can keep the body temperature while you're out in the ocean. And here I have taewak with me. This is what haenyos use as buoys out in the ocean. You can collect seafood inside here and then carry it out to the land after you're done working.
Haenyeo always move in a group for safety, and so do the trainees. Each haenyeo has a partner called a mulbot, or water friend, who monitors their condition underwater.
Hi, this is my mulbot for today, who will be watching my dive and come to my rescue whenever I have a problem.
They let each other know when they spot a potential catch.
여기 속에 닿는 데 있어요, 가운데. 아, 네. 나중에 가서 까봐요. 네.
Successful catches are celebrated together. And harvests are shared among the group.
Senior haenyeo teach young haenyeo how and where to catch food. They also share their catch when their bags are full. The haenyeo community is formed by great camaraderie between the senior and junior haenyeo.
And of course, they let go of young catches. The group has lots of fun together. But the water doesn't only hold sea creatures. It also contains waste.
Now, we just got out of the water. We got out with our water for the day. Partly because the wave is too strong, and also partly because there's just too many jellyfish out here that is dangerous for Haenyos to be outside today.
Marine pollution and fast-changing sea temperatures due to global warming have put the lives of Haenyos at risk in recent years. The types of catchable seafood have changed, and many divers have lost their lives due to being caught underwater by abandoned nets, hooks, and plastics.
Since the ocean is too polluted with waste, there aren't enough sea creatures to catch. Old fishing nets have also led to accidents where haenyeo get caught in them.
The most urgent issue is global warming killing the marine algae that shellfish consume, distorting the food chain. The waste from developments on land is also flowing into the ocean, contaminating the marine ecosystem.
Such disturbances in the ecosystem lead to barren seabeds. Haenyos say they directly feel such changes in the marine environment.
Each year, urchin barren is worsening and other sea life is disappearing. I feel sad and burdened for my junior and future haenyeo.
Really, there is no more sea life. Conches are disappearing and so are abalones. It's really sad.
To preserve the culture and history of haenyeo, regional governments are providing financial incentives for new haenyeo. They also support medical care for active and retired haenyeo. A haenyeo museum also has been founded to highlight the haenyeo lifestyle. Despite the efforts, however, experts say that priority should be preserving sea resources.
We should work to establish a system for haenyeo to keep being able to catch sea creatures in their harvesting grounds.
A haenyeo with 35 years of experience, Kang Hae-sim, agrees.
I think the regional leadership should work to prevent or minimize pollution. The sea is like my mother, my husband, and my child, something that I cannot exist without.
Being a haenyeo is more than a job. It's a way of life that sustains the environment and upholds a culture of solidarity that will require continuous effort to preserve. 이시후, 아리랑 뉴스, 제주.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Cuba, firefighters are battling a large fire at an oil depot. The Cuban city of Matanzas is battling a blaze that started at an oil storage depot on Friday. The fire started when one of 8 storage tanks at the facility was struck by lightning. On Saturday, an explosion at a second storage tank injured over 100 people. Reports say that one firefighter has been confirmed dead, 16 people are missing, and 24 have been hospitalized, with 5 in critical condition. Meanwhile, Cuba has received help from Mexico and Venezuela, with both countries sending experienced firefighters and 4 plane loads of firefighting chemicals. Each tank is capable of storing 300,000 barrels of oil, which is used for power plants. The incident could worsen the current fuel shortage in Cuba. Following elections held in June, Colombia is waking up to its first left-wing president this morning. This comes after Gustavo Petro, a former member of the M19 guerrilla group, was sworn into office at the Bolivar Plaza in the capital of Bogotá on Sunday. The 62-year-old former senator ran on a platform of social and economic reforms. He has promised to fight hunger and proposed a $5.8 billion tax reform to fund social programs. Petro has also pledged to revive negotiations with the remaining guerrilla groups in the country. Following his rebound infection, U.S. President Joe Biden has tested negative for COVID-19. Biden left his White House isolation for the first time in 2 weeks on Sunday after news of his test result on Saturday. He initially caught the virus on July 21st and began taking the antiviral medication Paxlovid. Biden then tested negative on July 26th and 27th, but was back in isolation on July 30th after being hit with the rebound infection, a side effect associated with the COVID-19 medication. Now, despite his illness, the president continued working, giving occasional speeches from the White House balcony. The 79-year-old will head to Kentucky on Monday to meet those affected by the state's worst-ever flooding. In the U.S., Lieutenant General Michael Langley has become the first African-American to be promoted to the rank of 4-star general in the Marine Corps. Langley had been nominated by President Joe Biden in June and will now take charge of the U.S. Africa Command from its base in Stuttgart, Germany. Speaking during the promotion ceremony on Saturday, Langley spoke of the impact the milestone will have on younger people and also paid tribute to those who had gone before him. Up until 1942, black men were blocked from joining the Marine Corps. The American military was then desegregated in 1948. The first African-American Marine was promoted to the rank of one-star general in 1979. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good Monday afternoon. Now intense rain clouds are moving southward and it's pouring down in Seoul. Heavy rain alerts have been expanded to almost all parts of Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces. On the other hand, southern regions are dealing with blistering heat. Now bands of rain clouds will produce the bulk of heavy rain up to 350 millimeters in central regions and 300 millimeters in and around the Seoul metropolitan area and Gangwon-do province until tomorrow. So please get ready to evacuate immediately if you're in low-lying or other flood-prone areas. While central regions where heat alerts have been lifted earlier are being battered by heavy rain, southern parts are fighting scorcher weather with heat alerts still in place in Gyeongsang-do and Jeju Island. And the same pattern will continue throughout this week. Heavy rain in central regions and extreme heat in southern parts. So always keep an eye on your local weather forecast. Now let's take a look at the worldwide weather conditions.
Those are the headlines at this hour. Do stay tuned to Arirang News for more on the day's top stories. Thank you for now. See you on Tuesday.